Hey, Art of Likability family. This week's episode is brought to you by the good folks over at FreshBooks Accounting. They completely updated their software to make it really super simple. So if you need to send out invoices, get paid online, and keep track of your expenses really simply, they got you covered. Go to freshbooks.com/Arel. They're going to have a little section that says, "How did you hear about us?" Make sure to put the Art of Likability podcast and get a 30-day free trial. Let's jump into this week's episode.
Welcome to the Art of Likability, ranked one of the top podcasts in the world. In this podcast, you'll discover how to leverage likability to build stronger relationships, lead more efficiently, close more sales, and keep customers happy while increasing success in your professional and personal life. Let's jump in with your host, Arel Moody.
What's going on, Likability family? Arel Moody here, your host of the Art of Likability podcast, where we teach you the strategies you need to be super awesome. How's that sound? I think that sounds pretty good. And if that doesn't sound good to you, you are totally not going to like this podcast. This is what we do. We teach you specifically how to create that it factor, how to make sure that your presence with other people is at its highest level. You get charisma, you get the it factor, you get the skills necessary to set yourself apart from every other person who doesn't have this knowledge. That's pretty exciting. And that's what you get at this podcast. So I'm super excited about this. And I want to talk about a subject that's super important to me. And it most likely is super important to you. It's about how do you discuss difficult topics. Recently, there was another mass shooting. Unfortunately, it doesn't really matter when you listen to this podcast. Statistically, there was probably a mass shooting at some point near when you're listening to this. It just happens. I mean, recording this in February, right after the Florida shooting, and I read a statistic about there being about 18 shootings in 45 days of this year. So in 2018, in America, there was 45 shootings. 18 shootings in 45 days. It's a very difficult subject. Now, I'm not a gun owner. I don't own a gun. I have lots of really close family members and friends who do. And I realized that I just don't understand the gun owner, right? And it doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with it. I don't want, and it's always funny because I say that, like, I want you to just hear me for a second. I'm not saying I don't understand you. What's wrong with you? That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying, like, I generally, since I don't do it, I don't get it. The same way I don't understand snowboarding, the same way I don't understand golf. It's because I don't do those things, right? Like you can see it, but you don't really understand it. And what I encourage you to do is, for difficult situations, for broaching the topics of difficult situations, what many of us do, regardless of what side of the conversation we're on, we have this thought that says, I know what's right, the other person is wrong, they're an idiot for not seeing it the way I see it. It's like a very default thing, especially with difficult topics. So if you're talking about anything, politics, religion, anything that's going to be a red button that pushes someone into the red zone, it's very easy to polarize. Now, I get that you have your strong opinions. That's fine. I'm not saying don't have strong opinions. It's great to know who you are and where you stand. However, I encourage you to broach I hope I'm using that word correctly, by the way. Broach, like to approach, to broach. We'll see. I'm sure somebody, the grammar police will let me know if I am. But we approach it from curiosity. I had reached out on my personal Facebook page and just say, hey, listen, I really don't understand gun culture, but I'd like to understand people's viewpoints. And I want to understand if this happened, why do you feel this, if that happened? And it's not from a place of trying to understand them to change them. That's not the point. The very first step is to understand people for the sake of understanding people. That's it. From there, if we can understand other people's viewpoints, all of a sudden, maybe we have empathy for them. Maybe we can actually get to a dialogue or to a place that we couldn't get to before because the knowledge wasn't there. I don't think any of you are going to solve the world's toughest problems in one phone call. In a perfect world, yeah, we would, you know, but I haven't lived in that world where tough problems get solved in one conversation. But what I found is that eventually tough problems will get solved. In many countries, slavery was a total legal thing. Like just right there, bam, that's my slave. Totally legal. I got the rights to do that. And through a long conversation and dialogue, we approached that and said, no, this no longer will be, for various reasons. So it's not an impossibility to get to change, but it doesn't happen overnight. But it will not happen from saying people are stupid. It will not happen from saying I'm right, they're wrong, and that's where the conversation starts. There's no change that starts that way. If you're someone who loves guns and you believe it's your right, like really get a grasp of someone who's talking about guns. Because typically, and I'm overgeneralizing right now. I know that, but it's a short podcast. I don't have the time to go into all the intricacies, right? I know I'm overgeneralizing, but a lot of times people say, "Hey, listen, it's not the guns. Guns have always existed. It's the mental instability. It's the culture. That's the real problem. The guns are just the instrument that these people are using." Right. And if you're trying to say, let's make a real change, don't get rid of guns, let's change the people who are using the guns. Right. That's kind of and it's the rights and it's my right to own the gun. Right. So that's one viewpoint. Then you have the other viewpoint, which is, hey, listen, the guns are the instrument that these wild, unstable people are choosing. Let's stop giving them access to that tool. And, if they had a knife, they can only maybe stab one person, two people before they get taken down. I mean, I don't know the numbers on knife stabbings or anything, but just bear with me, right? Focus on the idea, not the technical side. But they wouldn't be able to take down large groups of people with that. So until we can figure out how to, affect that change in society, let's deal with the instrument of choice, which is guns, and let's get the gun control to a point like where, countries in, like London and Japan and, places like that, they have cities, there's cities with major populations that don't have such high. So let's model those and figure out a solution, right? What gets us nowhere is when both of these sides go, my side's totally right, your side's totally wrong. Suck it up. Because here's the only victim when we take it with that approach. The only victim are the people who are tragically affected by this. We all agree something must get done, right? What it is, that's the challenge. So regardless of what your tough situation is, you have to realize that it starts with saying, if I start from a rigid place of not even being intrigued, I fail. So I want you to start realizing that, like, look, whether you're talking about, like, now, obviously we're talking about a heavy subject right now, like gun control, which is a very, hot button. But I mean, it could be something like, why did this person show up late? You know, it could be, why is this person always late and I'm always on time? If someone cares about other people, they show up on time. But the person who's late, maybe they're dealing with something. And maybe the person who's always shows up on time, like the other person who's late, like, why are you so anal? Like, we don't like approach it from a place of inquisitiveness, right? And this works for hot topics, right? It can work for little things, like as you guys know, one of my sponsors for this podcast is FreshBooks, right? So for a long time, you could say, like, hey, I don't like technology. I'm never going to use technology. I'm not going to use that accounting software you keep talking about, Rel. But you could say, oh, well, let me approach it from a place of being inquisitive. Like, how does it help me save time? How does it help me take pictures of my receipts, right? Like, I'm just using this as an example here, right? And of course, you can go to freshbooks.com/Arel and get a 30-day free trial. You know that, right? You just put in Art of Likability. How'd you hear about us? You know that. You can do that. But sometimes people don't do it because they're like, well, I know it doesn't work for me. It's not going to work. So we don't get inquisitive, whether it's a software, whether it's a tough subject, whether it's, anything. People, when we approach it from, I don't understand it, I don't get it, therefore I'm not curious, their brain shuts off. So I ask you, what are the areas in your life that you feel very strongly about that maybe, just maybe, it would be a public service, a public good to approach it from a perspective of curiosity. And it's fascinating, not to, a lot of times people use curiosity the wrong way. They use curiosity to try to explain through questions why the other person is wrong. Just be inquisitive. Like, why is it that you feel that way? What does it mean to you? What would it mean to you if this was taken away? What would it mean to you if this happened? How did you get involved with it? You'll be surprised at what doors open up, right? You might be surprised. It might be interracial marriage, it might be interreligious, it might be, uh, you know, whatever it is that like causes people to get like, whoa, whoa, pump the brakes. You're going into my uncomfortable territory. Whenever I am in a situation and people bring up a subject that I'm uncomfortable about, I get inquisitive because I believe that all people care about the reasons they care about because they have reasons to care about it. Now, just because you don't see those reasons or don't have those reasons doesn't mean those reasons are wrong. It just means you don't see them. That's all. And it's not saying that if you understand someone's viewpoint, you're giving it credibility. That's another big fear of people. Well, if I get curious and I ask them questions, it's going to be like validating it. It's like me saying like my opinion isn't rock solid, that I'm not certain. It's not about being uncertain. You just get inquisitive. So I encourage you, to ask. And one of the best ways to do that is to approach someone. So let's say you are uh, whatever it is, you're scared of tech and there's someone who likes tech, or there's someone who hates guns and you love guns, and there's someone who loves guns and hates guns, and like whatever is a thing, right? Find someone you can approach and say, hey, I would love to, have a really genuine conversation about it. But my fear is that since it's such a hotly debated topic, that people I've seen, especially online, social media, they can't talk about it without remaining civil and educated and respectful. So I am very curious about the conversation. I'd like to have it, and I'd like to be respectful. Is that something that you think you can do? And if they go, if they just start going off into this like mean rant, just know that's not the person you can have the conversation with, right? I've done this with politics. I've gone to people who have different political views as me, and I say, hey, why do you follow that guy? What is it about this person that you love? Like, help me understand. Like, I am very genuinely curious. And that's all it is. It's just curiosity. The easiest way to do it is premise it with, here's my opinion. And don't premise it like, like if you use certain terminology, right, you're going to rile people up. I've seen people say, well, if the right would just do this, they'd get their heads out their butts and we'd have a better society. Or if the left just gave this, we'd be in such a better place. Like, when you use terminology or language like that, it's very aggressive. So if you say, I'm trying to be respectful here, but let me tell you why these idiots don't know what, like, you're not trying, just because you're saying you're trying to be respectful doesn't actually make you respectful, right? Do you get that? Like, there's way more to respect than just that. So you premise it and you make sure you reread it and ask yourself, if somebody was talking, and this is the strategy I want you to use, okay, to know if your question is formed respectfully. If you want to post a question in person or on social media, and you want to make sure you're posting it respectfully so that you can have an actual dialogue based on curiosity, ask yourself, if this question was written exactly the same way, except my opposing view was the subject of the question, would I be offended? So, for example, if you say, let's say you're pro guns, right? Like pro gun ownership. And you say, I don't understand why people don't, I don't understand why people are focusing on guns and not the issue, which is the people. Let's focus on the people because the guns have always been around. What's wrong with these people? Right? So if you position it like that, just imagine if it was flipped and it said, I don't understand why people are pro guns. What's wrong with these people when they know the issue is the guns? I don't get them, right? Or whatever else. I can't remember verbatim, right? But you take whatever question you're going to ask that you think is respectful and just flip it so it's about your subject. So if it's about religion, right? I don't understand why people are X religion. Like, it doesn't make sense. Like, you say, oh, well, that was respectful. Well, replace it with your own religion. I don't understand why people are, and then replace it with your religion. My religion, it doesn't make sense. Does that feel and sound respectful? If it hits you in any way that makes you go, no, I would get a little like, whatever that sound is, like, then you know it's not respectful. And I think that our society at large would benefit tremendously from having respectful dialogues based on curiosity and truly desiring to move to a common good. And whenever there's a common good, someone's got to give up a little, someone's got to give up something. We all have to give up, honestly, to get to a common good so that we all win. I genuinely believe that we live in a society of win-win. It's totally possible. We just have to look for it. If we look, sports have kind of ruined us to think the only way I can win is if you lose. And as competitive as a man as I am, as an adult, my competitive nature extends into how do I create a win-win? I want to win. I want you to win. At society as large, I want to win. In society, I want you to win. I don't want you to feel like you're living in a society that's crushing you, but I don't want to live in a society that makes me feel like it's crushing me either. How do we get the win-win? And if you start with that conversation, if you start with that premise, everyone wins. But if your premise is, I'm right and people need to see why I'm right, that premise creates failure. But when the premise is, I know there's a way I can win and I know there's a way you can win, let's talk about it. We get to a great place there. So I hope that you use this in difficult conversations when difficult conversations come up. And the world needs us to have to evolve. And it's the time. The time is now. So I hope that this information was helpful. Trust me, this information ain't going to help you. But the application of this information will absolutely transform your conversations into a whole new way. All right? Sending you a big old high five. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't hit the subscribe button yet. If you just came across this podcast, leave a 5-star review and a comment. I'd appreciate it. And check out our online course on how to start and keep a conversation going with anyone, because I believe human connections are the best. You can go to artoflikability.com to learn more about the stuff we offer, how you can get our interview manual for your job, how you can get our online course for talking to people. It's great stuff. And the world deserves your greatness. You are awesome. Psh.
Thanks for listening. Make sure to subscribe to our podcast, The Art of Likability, and reach out with any questions you have. Until next time, remember, my friend, you are awesome.